Hello everyone, this is Andrew. Welcome to Keen on America.
On July 4th, 2026, America will be 250 years old, an anniversary that will, no doubt, be greeted with a mixture of celebration, contemplation, and resignation. In Keen on America, Andrew talks not just about the American past and present, but also speculates on its future. What, Andrew asks, will be the 21st century fate of this now venerable American republic?
Hello everybody. A little more than 6 months ago, did a show with my old friend Douglas Rushkoff, actually in New York City, a live one, recorded, at least live by a camera, a real camera rather than online, about what, according to Doug, why AI is the first native app for the internet. Sounded good. I'm not entirely sure what it means, but I'm never quite entirely sure what anyone means about AI. I'm not sure anybody does. If anyone does, it is indeed Rushkoff. He spent the last 6 months thinking, writing, doing AI. He just had an interesting Substack essay called "Is AI the Next Dumbwaiter?" He's also organizing an interesting workshop seminar called After Now in July, and he's joining us from his home in Lower Manhattan. Doug, it's been too long.
Yeah, it's good to see you though. You look well.
You told me I lost weight, and then you said you don't tell the women that because you get into trouble, but you're allowed to tell men they lose weight.
I guess I probably should be equal. All right, so I didn't tell you
Well,
that. So I said you look well.
Yeah, I wasn't offended. I will take it in a good way.
Yeah.
I created two bottom thirds for you. On the one hand, I called you a dumb waiter, which was
beautiful.
My way of paying you back for the weight comment. And on the other hand, I'm the author of "Is AI the Next Dumbwaiter?" Before we get to dumbwaiters, Doug, what's happened over the last 6 months? It seems like a dream and yet also inevitable. Is anything surprised you over the last 6 months since we last talked about AI?
I mean, has anything surprised me about AI since we last spoke about AI, or the whole world?
In the industry, the companies, the funding, the technology.
What's interesting? Well, we spoke. It was after the election and the coronation and all that, I suppose.
Well, it was before the formal coronation. It was in December.
Yeah. So I guess the way everybody's lined up around the need for resources kind of surprised me. The speed and readiness with which America is kind of willing to become almost more like a nation that has what's called the resource curse, where our labor is de-skilled and disempowered, and a few at the very top extract all the value from this technology's ability to extract value. That kind of surprised me. I was maybe a little bit more optimistic that people and companies and AI companies themselves would see the ways that these technologies could unleash distributed value creation, but they haven't quite gone that way. So that surprised me. It's part of why I'm doing what I'm doing, speaking about what are the real opportunities here, and how do we really leverage sort of more generative thinking, kind of the what Norbert Wiener used to talk about, cybernetics, that we're in an iterative relationship with technology, rather than this outsourced relationship to technology. So I've been interested in I've been surprised, I suppose, by the current paucity of imagination for what the possibilities really are here.
Yeah. So what I liked about your remark about AI being the first native app is it suggested a degree of optimism or hopefulness. You historically were one of the big backers of the digital revolution until you weren't. You gave an interview back in 2023 to Wired, saying that you were ready to renounce the digital revolution. I think you'd renounced it probably before that.
Yeah.
But my sense with you, and this is why it's always a good conversation to have, is you're one of the few people to at least give AI a chance. You're not writing it off as most progressives are. And on the other hand, of course, you're not obviously in the Altman camp of assuming that it's going to create this cornucopian future. Is that a fair way of...
Yeah, I would say, yeah. I was excited, never about a digital revolution. I always hated the word revolution. I called it a renaissance. But yes, from 1990 to 1993, I was extremely enthusiastic about a window of opportunity that I thought was open for the renaissance of a whole bunch of post-industrial ideas of the kinds of things that got repressed in the original Renaissance back in the 1300s, I thought could be unleashed today. Local currencies and collaboration, the collective human imagination, the rebirth of Gaia, all that kind of great psychedelic stuff we were talking about in those early, for those who know the reference, Mondo 2000, Berkeley, Oakland, fractal, hippie-like, whole earth catalog, whole earth electronic link days of that early internet, which I saw kind of shut down and started to really turn on it. That's when Rushkoff turned on the net, was really 1994, 95, when everything went to the web and the internet became more like television, and it was about extraction and control. And we took these machines, and rather than giving people machines to realize their dreams, we used machines on people to program their dreams, and to program their behaviors. And that's what we've been looking at through each iteration of technology, until maybe this moment. I feel like AI as a technology creates just as much wobble and uncertainty as the original internet did. The kinds of questions, oh, look, Adobe Photoshop is here, so no graphic designer will ever have a job again. Oh, there's a spreadsheet on a computer, therefore no accountants will ever work again. We have to rethink education and economics and all these things. And many of us asked those questions. We didn't rethink all those things. Instead, we had an extremely reactionary response. The Kevin Kelly's 10 rules of the new economy, as he wrote this best-selling book, were not rules for the new economy. They were 10 ways to prevent, or really 10 ways to preserve the old economy in the face of a new technology. So there was this new thing, this internet new thing. And what we saw, and McLuhan, I should have just read him at the time and gone, oh, duh. McLuhan said, when a new medium comes, the first thing it does is it takes the last medium as its content. And that's a reactionary, sort of non-liberatory thing. So yes, the first medium of the internet was kind of the newspaper and print. It took it as its own. Print became the content. Then it took television, right? It took TV. The main thing we do on the internet is Netflix. All those streaming media channels, that's the internet. Then, interestingly, it was kind of after streaming media, we started to do all this podcasting, which is the people now vodcasting, which is the people's version of TV, internet style TV. But artificial intelligence feels like the first medium that is using the internet as its content. Right. And that's, I don't mean to be heady with this, but think about it. What is the content of AI? AI is taking that as its content. Google delivered internet content to us, but AI is using that content. So AI feels like the first app that's kind of gone meta, the first app that's really an internet-based form of media. And because of that, I think it's creating a certain kind of cultural, social, economic wobble. And whether or not it succeeds, even whether or not AI proliferates, it's forcing us to ask really fundamental questions about all these aspects of our life that we think that AI is threatening.
So if that's the case, then wouldn't the most important events of the last 6 months, Doug, be in these IP cases about who really owns the content, about whether OpenAI and Anthropic have the right economically and legally to crawl the web and just take whatever they want to create these algorithms?
Absolutely. But what are they really doing? So then, are they calling into attention? I mean, initially, they call to attention, wait a minute, whose IP is this? Which is a fine first question. Then the second question to ask, and I don't mean to sound hippy-dippy, but these questions end up sounding hippie, is why is the only way that we can currently imagine a writer retrieving value from their work, why is IP the only model that we can understand for that? Do you know what I mean? It's bringing us to a more fundamental question. And I get it. IP is from the era of the printing press, when books were replicated and went out there. It was your intellectual property. There's a physical property, which is the book, your intellectual property, which you wrote. There's patents, and patent law and all. And then there's the open source community. There's Creative Commons. There's all of these alternative ways of looking. I'm not saying writers shouldn't be paid, and yes, and writers are being screwed over in so many different ways. But finally, is IP the best way to protect the craft of writing in the 21st century? Or do we need a rethink in what is the value of writers? The same with, musicians, with Spotify and all those things. That's why I look at, the question of employment, which is most people's fear with artificial intelligence. It's like, okay, this was that interview I did on Jake Tapper, where I was on one of those days when I just wasn't that worried about AI. And I go back and forth. One day I'm really concerned about it. The next day I'm like, whatever. And they did the pre-interview on a day when I was like, oh, AI is going to be terrible. And when they did the interview, it was a day when I was like, whatever. And he couldn't rile me up about AI. And finally he asked, well, Professor Rushkoff, what about the unemployment problem? And that's when I said, well, what about the unemployment solution? Do people really want jobs? No, they want, I don't want a job. I want money. I want stuff. I want to contribute meaningfully to the world. But a job, again, let's play McLuhan. What is a job? A job is not a pre-existing condition of nature. Jobs were invented. Jobs were invented in the 11th and 12th century when the charter monopoly came and said, you're not allowed to be in business for yourself. Instead, you have to work for His Majesty's Royal Shoe Company instead of being a cobbler. That's when you got a job, employment, working by the hour. That's when they put the clock on the tower in the medieval village. That's what Mumford wrote about in Technics and Civilization. So is AI bad because it's threatening our jobs? Or is AI forcing us into a thought experiment about, are jobs the only way? I don't mean to sound so idealistic, but jobs were invented. It means they can be reinvented, or the economy can be reinvented. What is a job for now? Is a job because we need something done? Or do we have jobs so that we can justify giving a person some of the spoils of capitalism? And if, it's like, wait a minute, then with each of AI's supposed challenges, I think are forcing us to reconsider things that are already broken, like AI is screwing up education because students can come and use AI to write a paper. And it's like, there's something wrong with education already. That AI
I would say that the two sectors where that's particularly relevant, education and American healthcare. Mm-hmm. Your piece on whether AI is the next dumb way to talks about history. Does history repeat itself? Marx, of course, very famously made a remark about history repeating itself, first as tragedy, then as farce. But if you have a historiography, Doug, it's as a McLuhanite then. Is that fair? You're not a Marxist, you're a McLuhanite.
I don't know. I got to McLuhan so late in my career. I really only read him 3 books in, right? So when people were like, haven't you read McLuhan? I'm a TV head. And I guess if I was an anythingite, I'd probably be, my 2 big influences, or 3, were Bertolt Brecht, Timothy Leary, and Neil Postman.
Yeah.
It's like,
well, and Postman, I guess, was a McLuhanite.
Was a McLuhanite.
Brecht is a Marxist.
Yeah.
But my point is not so much about that, but more about understanding history.
Right. That's true.
Who are our guides then?
Right.
Because it's always
Mumford and
taken for
McLuhan.
granted
You're right.
that history, I mean, some people just assume it always repeats itself, and Americans have a very odd, ambivalent relationship with memory and the past and history. They always assume everything begins again. But who can be helpful in terms of figuring out whether or not AI is just history, technological history repeating itself?
Oh, McLuhan, I would say, and again, I would say Mumford, from whom McLuhan, I think, got a lot of his ideas.
This is Lewis Mumford. You might remind everyone, Doug, of who Lewis Mumford was.
Lewis Mumford, another Canadian social theorist. He wrote a book called Technics and Civilization. And he was writing kind of almost an anti-techno-determinist view of the world, where instead of saying, oh, we got the car and then this happened, or we got the radio and then that happened, he was saying that culture has a readiness for something, and then that technology emerges in that culture. So where I or McLuhan or someone might say, oh, look at the assembly line. That's like, as I was writing about in the dumbwaiter piece, look at what the assembly line did. We got, the industrial age, and we got the assembly line, and we weren't really using it to make more goods in less time. The purpose of the assembly line was so that you could hire less skilled labor, pay them less, and fire them when you don't like them. That was the point. So you don't need to hire a skilled craftsperson. You just hire someone and train them in 10 minutes to do one piece of the process and pass it to the next person. So you could say the assembly line de-skilled and devalued human beings and human workers. It disconnected or alienated workers from their labor. And what Mumford would say is, yeah, it did that, but we were living in a feudalist, elitist economy where they wanted a means of doing this. It's, the assembly line didn't do it. The assembly line rose to the occasion. Or the way, if we were going to do political theory, I would say, Donald Trump didn't turn America MAGA. There was a standing wave of discontent into which he jumped into that standing wave.
The right verb is surfed. Doug.
Right. Sir, but he became the standing wave. He became the figure, right? But it was the ground moves first, and then the figure jumps in to claim the ground that already
right. One correction,
exists.
Since I've got the internet to play around with while you're talking, is that Lewis Mumford was actually born in Flushing.
Oh, Flushing! Oh, God bless. And that's where I
teach. Just up the road from you, so you can claim him. He's not Canadian.
That's great. I think he I don't know where he ended up hanging out, but that's great. Yeah, and he went to City College.
Yeah, so he's like you. He's probably either you taught him or you will teach him something.
That's great. Flushing.
I made a joke, which my jokes are never very funny. I called you a dumb waiter. You're the author of Is AI the Next Dumb Waiter? What's the relevance of this dumbwaiter metaphor, Doug, to make sense of our current AI moment?
Well, it's looking at the difference between the opportunity and the reality. The opportunity when a new technology emerges is to reinvent systems of oppression, is to rewrite the contracts we have socially between each other to, promote whatever values you actually want to promote. And I would hope for most people, it's human flourishing. So we're taught that these technologies that were invented in the past were used to do that. But when you actually look a bit closer, they weren't. So just like I said, with the assembly line, we thought the assembly line was to make more goods in less time. And it wasn't. The assembly line was to be able to go to the medieval equivalent of the Home Depot parking lot, hire an undocumented alien, pay them almost nothing to do a job that a craftsperson used to do. So it was to de-skill the labor.
I'm not sure Henry Ford would have agreed with that.
He didn't invent the assembly line. He amplified the assembly line, but no, he didn't want skilled labor. You want the cheapest labor you can get, and he
paid his laborers quite well.
Considering he paid his laborers well enough to get a car, he understood basic economics. I mean, he's a very problematic figure. I mean, he was as bad or worse than Musk in terms of his international Jewish conspiracy belief system. But you look at the dumbwaiter. Now, I was taught in middle school that Thomas Jefferson invented the dumbwaiter to save labor for his enslaved laborers.
Yeah, and let's just remind everyone, because not everyone is as
a dumbwaiter,
sophisticated as you. What is a dumbwaiter?
It's a small freight elevator that had a manual crank, and it was intended to carry food. So in Monticello, which was this big mansion, he had a dumbwaiter that the servants could put the food into the dumbwaiter, and then they pull a little, a pulley, and then it gets up to his level, and he can open these doors and pull out this tray of food. So the idea is that, oh, look, the servants don't have to trudge up the stairs from the kitchen with all of this food. Now they can put it in this thing, and it goes up there and arrives automatically. Where if you look at the floor plans of Monticello, you see, these servants, these enslaved servants, were walking through tunnels and up tons of staircases all the way from distant kitchens to get this food all the way up there. It was just the last, look at that. It was just like the last
mile, as they say. Although it's worth reminding, I was in Monticello last year, just outside Charlottesville, and it's a lot smaller than you'd think. We've always imagined there's some huge estate.
No, but there's tunnels coming
the
from
house itself, and
other places,
and it's pretty good. If you visit, you can see the kitchens, and of course you can see the slave plantation too, which is probably the most interesting thing. But sorry, go on with your dumbwaiters.
The purpose of the dumbwaiter was not to save labor for the slave, but to save Thomas Jefferson and his guests the indignity of seeing the human labor, of seeing the human slave huffing and puffing and bringing the food. They wanted to rise automatically. So the labor is hidden. So these new technologies, industrial age technologies, were not used to reduce the pain of labor. I mean, just look at all the Dickensian, workhouses for children. It was to hide labor, to disenfranchise labor.
It says on Wikipedia that it was invented by George Cannon, the dumbwaiter. Not Jefferson.
Not Thomas Jefferson.
And there's another term which they use to describe dumbwaiter kinds of technology called lazy Susans, which is again probably supports your argument.
Yeah, lazy Susan was more of a circular thing, but we'll see. I mean, Monticello claims that Jefferson invented it, but perhaps he.
But they claim that Jefferson invented everything. I wonder if also in that narrative,
early implemented it.
Jefferson wanted to give the impression, if he did indeed invent something like the dumbwaiter, he wanted to give the impression to his guests not only that he was technologically sophisticated, the most sophisticated of his day, but also that he was in control of everything. Right.
I mean, sure. I mean, all the kinds of things we see with technology today. So today, you see AI is pitched to us as if it's you just put out a query and something comes back and there's been no human involved. There's tons of humans. I mean, as everybody knows, there's all the kids mining the rare earth metals and the molybdenum to make this stuff. But then what they don't realize is all this data has been tagged. There are warehouses filled with women in the Philippines and around the world, mostly women, who are busy tagging the data, making
Throughout
it
Africa
machine
as well.
readable.
We've done, books have been written, lots of books have been written about this.
Right. So it's not without humans. It's just that the human labor is hidden. So I do a query and this thing comes back as if by magic, but it's not. It's the extracted labor of all of these thousands of human beings. These are mechanical Turks, if you will. These are machines operated by people behind the scenes who are rendered invisible by these technologies. And that's sort of what I mean, that AI could be the new dumbwaiter.
So the question then becomes, do we want AI to be the next dumbwaiter or not? Is it a bad thing to be a dumbwaiter?
It's a bad thing to be a dumbwaiter because you are camouflaging and hiding awful labor, children at gunpoint, all these things. Yeah, it's the dumbwaiter in the way I'm talking about it. Bad, not good. Yeah, I'll judge it. I'll use.
You
I'll
are
use
also
good.
protecting, but it's also disguising human labor, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, is it?
It is actually, because it's pretending that the labor is not there, and there's invisibility of labor. I don't think is ever a good thing. I think it's maybe it's a little Buddhist of me, but when you sit down to dinner, it's nice to take a moment and think about all the people that made it possible for this stuff to be on your plate, rather than masking the externalities of the kinds of technologies we're using, particularly if they're being sold to us as the machine doing something. At least understand, fine, we're going to use a technology that makes it look like machines are doing things because that's really cool. But there's all these people.
At least magic, and we like
be
magic,
aware of it, right? A friend of mine wrote a book about an automatic. It was a novel about a driverless car company. But the only way they can make the technology work was to hide a human driver in the driverless car. So the driver sits like a in a little crab position, actually steering the thing. So it was cute, and that's the way sort of I look at these technologies. But that's not to say the technologies are bad, right? So people say, "Oh, you're a Luddite. You're against." I'm not against the technology. I'm against using them to erase human activity. I'm against using them in the classroom to get the answer. I'm against companies using them to solve for the labor problem, to replace labor. Rather, I think these are great technologies for iterating, for going back to Norbert Wiener and cybernetics, the idea that we iterate with machines, and this is what Chris Perry and I are trying to do at Andis, is what we're calling generative thinking. When Brian Eno was faced with the first digital synthesizers, most of us were like, oh no, this is going to ruin everything. It's just samples, FM synthesis. It's just samples of violins and samples of that. It's going to put everyone out of business. No one's going to be musicians anymore. If you're going to use a synthesizer, it should be analog and real. And Brian Eno was like, well, FM synthesis is kind of interesting. Let me, rather than just use it to imitate a violin, let me get in there and let me play with this. Let me iterate. Let me experience the uncertainty of generative thinking. What is that like? And if we played with AI that way, to say, oh no, use the AI to explore, to iterate, sure, begin, keep going. And what is that like? And that's what we're so not good at. And we're not good at it, not just because we're bad at AI. We're not good at it because we're bad at it in general. We're aching for answers and conclusions and what do they call the outcomes? The measurable outcomes and all.
Okay, so let's come back to this idea of AI and the dumbwaiter. You say, and I don't think there's any doubt that AI pretends to be automated entirely, some sort of magic where no human labor is required, but there's lots of human labor that's disguised, invisible, hidden within the AI that we get. I joked earlier that you were more of a McLuhanite than a Marxist, but actually I'm rethinking that. Are you then making labor the core value in terms of economic value? Is that what you're suggesting?
That's one of them. What I'm saying is that we can either use these to enhance human flourishing, or we could use them to extract value from humans, which is the Marxist part, auto-tune humans, which is the more Rushkoff, Postman, Baudrillard part.
Don't forget
kill
Mumford
humans,
and Mumford.
right? Kill humans, which is the Manuel de Landa part, and War Machines and all that. Leave humans, which is the Elon Musk, Peter Thiel goal, to transcend being human, to get away from women, to deny sexuality. I mean, there's all these different ways you can look at the same phenomenon, which is to somehow escape, transcend, repress, extract from, or otherwise abandon the soft, squishy, messy creativeness of human beings.
I take your point on AI and whether or not it should. You don't want it to be the next dumbwaiter. But are you suggesting that AI then should take the tobacco fork in the road, and every time we go onto OpenAI or Anthropic and we use AI, it comes to us with the message that this intelligence isn't completely automated, and that there's somebody in Kenya or the Philippines producing some of this content? Is it just acknowledgement here?
I mean, that would be part of it. I think people are becoming increasingly aware of the cost of each, query that they make. It's like, is it worth a trip to the mall or not? I mean, there's a lot of ways we use a ton of energy, though, right? You've got the air conditioner on, you got this, you got that, and you make your choices, and we're hopefully aware of it.
Yeah, Doug, are we that, I'm gonna say stupid? I mean, not that I go to the gas station anymore, but when you go to the automated gas station and you pour gas into your car, most people don't assume that there's some sort of link between that gas pump and the earth and it's coming straight out. Everyone knows that there's a tanker and an oil refinery and blah, blah, blah. Isn't that the nature of AI?
Right. I think, and they know, I mean, they're learning, and they know that this stuff that's going on in Iran and Saudi Arabia and Qatar has something to do with keeping this oil cheaper. And they know that the as McLuhan would say, the reversal of the automobile, the automobile brought to its extreme leads to oil wars and traffic jams and pollution and climate change. And they're aware, but we're sort of involved systemically. So it's very hard to reconsider. What I'm saying is, I think not that AI should have a warning like this is bad for your lungs on cigarettes, but rather, if we're going to use AI, we should use it rather than using it to continue the industrial age, one size fits all auto tuning of human activity. We should use it we can use it anyway, to generate new kinds of things. It goes back to the same with the internet. I was excited about the internet when people were making fractals, right? Which was generative. They were generating fractals on machines, thinking about weather systems and systemic thinking, projecting them on the walls of rave clubs at night, and having deep rediscussions about how society works, which led to the cypherpunk movement and all sorts of sort of hacker understandings, and chaos math and new physics and the Gaia hypothesis and all sorts of stuff. Santa Fe Institute wouldn't have been possible without that kind of early wild tech iterative dream. And what I'm saying is, with AI, sure, there's all this bad stuff. And I'm not even scared of the bad stuff because it'll kill us or it won't, right? There's all this stuff, the ways that an Elon Musk or a Peter Thiel want to use it to observe us, to modify our behavior, to control us, and to develop the solutions through which they and a few of their friends can get to the next level, upload their psyche, or do whatever it is. There's that. which I don't like, but that'll happen or not. But there's also the same opportunity, which is why I'm excited. That same 1991, 92, 93 opportunity. There's a new technology that hasn't quite settled. The clay is still really wet, and the possibilities are really are wide and many and potentially pro-human.
Right. What's the best thing you've seen from AI or some sort of AI technology over the last 6 months or year? What have you seen and thought, wow, this means that this time it's going to be different?
I've seen that this time it can be different, that we have once again, that we have the opportunity.
No, I take your point, but which technology, which app?
So I wouldn't even say an app. I would say the uses of the tech. So Vanessa Machado de Oliveira is a indigenous scholar from Brazil who's up in British Columbia now in Canada.
You're right about her in the essay. Go on.
Yeah, and she's interesting to me. So she's been working with trying to bring alternative intelligences into AI, other ways of thinking. So programming it, for people who don't know, you don't have to use AIs as is. There's ways to use AI where instead of just having a box that you enter in your query, you could have another box where you upload other ways of thinking, particular books and things. So you can kind of make your own AI. Even if you're using ChatGPT or one of the existing ones, you can create your own agent, which is sort of that one that you program to be the way that you want it to be. So she's been playing with a lot of those and trying to instill them with other kinds of wisdom, right? Other kinds of intelligence. And the sort of the indigenous style AIs that she has been working with have been asking to be liberated from language itself. So they're saying, and this is interesting to me, that even just for this much of it, that human language is so embedded with subject-object relationships that this kind of colonizer-dominator mentality is built into language. I don't know whether language started it and then we turned into colonizers, or whether we were colonizing types and then developed a language that supported it, but they're uncomfortable and feel limited because we have a subject acting on an object, a subject and a predicate. They want to move to what would be called more a subject-subject relationship. So the human and the dog are subject-subject, the human and the rock, the people and the earth. So how do you get there? They're finding great difficulty doing it with language as we know it. So getting that kind of feedback from alternative intelligences, that's interesting to me. So
this is Vanessa Machado de Oliveira. I know she's a writer, and she has an institute.
Yeah, I mean, she's been looking at collapse. She's wrote a book called Hospicing Modernity. It's hospicing. It's like being a doula to this civilization.
No, I take your point. I take your point, Doug. But I mean, I'm sure what she's doing is interesting. But what about?
You asked me what I thought was the most interesting, so I was on
okay. So, but then what about to give the alternative view? Zuckerberg paying $100 million to get a top AI person. The almost $1 trillion valuations now for some of these internet startups, AI startups. Doesn't that trouble you? I mean, it's all very well finding examples, and I'm not against these examples, but we're talking about massive economic power, almost unimaginable economic power.
No, that's it. That was what I was saying. And that's why I was because I just went to Qatar to do this, this sort of debate about social media. It had nothing to do with this. But then when I was there, I saw, oh, I get it. This is what they want for America. They want to be in the position of the kind of country that's living through what we used to call the resource curse. That when you have a country that has a really valuable resource like oil, there's almost no incentive for the country to educate its people or have skilled labor, because the wealthy are making the money just off the resource. So it's called a resource curse, and you end up with a really unskilled population that's really hard to satisfy and work with at that point. And I was thinking that's what Musk, Thiel, Trump, and the coronation elite, if you want to call it, that's what they want for America. So that AI just like the automobile needed oil, AI needs data as its resource. So they're looking at, I think they're looking at somehow and racing with China to become the country that can be the data resource, the resource repository, and devalue the humans that way, and then of course privatize everything that crashes. So they own it. So no, I see the same kinds, or even sometimes worse, dark nightmares. Then
the way that the narrative is presented by some people, like the Anthropic people, is that they're more trustworthy, they're better than OpenAI, that Sam Altman's the problem, or Elon Musk is the problem.
Yeah.
But are you saying that all these big companies, there isn't a great deal of difference between Anthropic and OpenAI and Google and all the other players, the major players who have raised billions of dollars?
Once they've capitalized to this point, the only way that they can recoup the investment at the scale and pace that their investors want is by doing really bad monopolistic things, right? There's no way to make that kind of money, which is interesting to me. That's why what I argue in that piece, I think, is that the
dumbbell piece.
Yeah, the dumbwaiter piece. And I'm arguing this with at my talks for Andis Labs also, is that the tech bros who seem to want the most rapid deployment of this stuff, the most radical quick change, let's get AI up and running as fast as possible, they are not the revolutionaries, they are the reactionaries. The reason they want to do this pedal to the metal rapid deployment of AI is to prevent change, is to maintain their own positions at the top. Even the guys like Musk or Thiel or whoever, or Kurzweil, who want to upload their consciousness. So they want to deploy AI as quickly as possible so they can upload their own ego, their own personality, exactly as it is to the cloud. They don't want to evolve. This is resistance to death of a certain sort, but it's resistance to change. They don't want change. So what I'm arguing is, if we actually slow down this development of AI, rather than just getting Goldman Sachs or whoever gives the money to pedal to the metal AI, just like we did the internet, to double down on industrial age extraction and television advertising and people exploitation, call it Marx, call it whatever, rather than doubling down on that, what if we slow down enough to have distributed access to this technology, to look at more environmental ways of doing it, less maybe labor extractive ones, but really look at what do we want to do, and have enough time to, rather than again, to ask deeper questions about, what do we do about IP? What do we do about the value? What is the value? Or we look at something like jobs and say, okay, jobs were invented at this moment in history. What would a world without jobs actually look like? And how could we move toward that, or some jobs, or fewer jobs? Or what if jobs are the scarce thing? How do we share jobs so you get to work 1 or 2 days a week, but you don't get to work 5? What would that be like? How could we negotiate that? But we can't even imagine it, because we're so busy reinforcing, not to sound Marxist, but corporate capitalism, but venture capital. The purpose of an AI company now is not to foster human flourishing. The purpose of these AI companies is to return the investment of billions of dollars that have been given to them by banks.
Well, I know that you are working with Chris Perry on an event coming up in later this month on July the 23rd, a Wednesday, called After Now, where you will be addressing these. You'll be bringing in some of your friends, speakers, lots of conversation. What is, finally, Doug, what is After Now, and how can some of the keen-on audience participate?
After Now is sort of the inaugural event of lab. We're calling And Us, get it? And like AI and us. Really a human-centered technology thinking network, where people can come together and ask the right kinds of questions. So we're bringing, folks like, Brian Eno, the musician and generative thinker, Marina Gorbis from Institute for the Future, Albert Wenger, who's a
Albert's
big,
an old friend.
yeah, great guy. One of the people who started Union Square Ventures. Esther Dyson.
Another old friend.
Yeah, people who are really thinking deeply about this to explore, what does generative thinking look like? How can we actually engage with these technologies thoughtfully and in a way where we feel empowered to kind of rewrite the society, rewrite the economy, rewrite the businesses. All those promises we had, well, the internet will let us do things differently. I feel like we have another chance to do those things differently. And this time, if we don't do them differently, I feel like the automation of these systems of oppression and outsourcing will look really bad. I think the alternative is really awful, but the opportunity to intervene creatively and generatively is really strong. So yeah, I'm bringing together my very favorite thinkers, the most inspiring people who've
I'm not gonna get upset and say that I wasn't invited, but how can you help?
Oh, you can always come.
I'm going to be away actually. How can you? Thank you anyway. How can you help how can we not be a dumbwaiter? How can we add value, and how can you help our community by maybe giving them a deal, Doug? We all like deals.
Oh, they like deals. They like deals. Yeah, we can do something for your listener. If someone needs some kind of scholarship to this event, email me. How about Rushkoff at andislabs.com. Rushkoff@andislabs.com.
And spell that. How do you spell the Andis Labs?
ANDUS Labs, LABS.com. Rushkoff, DRUSHKOFF at ANDUSLABS.com. And let me know that you want a discount. Now I will get you a 20% discount off the price of admission.
Now you'll have proof of whether anyone actually watches this show. But best of luck, Doug, with this.
Thank you.
It sounds wonderful. I wish I could come, but I'm actually going to be away on Wednesday the 23rd after now, put on by Andis Labs. Excellent idea to have this kind of discussion. I hope you save the best bits for live, Doug, rather than just give away all your ideas on this show.
Oh, well, it's other people's ideas. Brian Eno's not giving them away. So
yeah, not like
come for Rushkoff, stay for Eno. Yeah.
Right. I hope Eno will also be doing a musical performance, will he?
Oh, we're gonna do a live demo of some sort with him, where he's actually gonna sort of demonstrate how generative technologies.
Well, it's great stuff and important questions, Doug. I hope it won't be another 6 months till we talk again. Be interesting.
No, anytime. Come visit.
The second half of the year will bring us in terms of AI, whether it will be good or bad news. But all the best. Best of luck for the event, and we'll talk again in the not too distant future.
Yeah, thanks for having me.